Go.
I am ready. Okay, what we're going to be doing today, guys, is we're going to be talking about using the multiplication distributive property in algebra. First question I have is, when in the real world have you used the multiplication distributive property? Does anybody know? Anytime? I didn't think anybody would. That's why I said it. All right. Just picture this, okay? You went to dinner, okay? And everybody, there's about 4 people there. Everybody ate what they ate, and they decide, you get the bill, and everybody looks around, when you see the bill, and there's always the bottom part that says gratuity. How much is, and people try to figure it out, people pull out the iPhones, and everybody's clicking, punching buttons. Well, using distributive property, you can figure it out pretty quickly, okay? So I'll give you a perfect example. Say we have, like, the dinner costs $30, right? And if you're smart or you're cheap like me, I'm only giving 15%. Okay? So we use this $30 right here, and most of the time people just take this 30 and we try to put the 15 here and then try to do it all this way and like that. Simple way to do it, break it into parts, just like the distributive property. So the 30, put the 10% right here, plus 30 times 5%. That's it. So, knowing that, if I do regular math right here, I know this is $3. I know 30 times 0.5 is $1.50. So I now know the whole thing is $4.50. Very simple. And that's all the distributive property is. It's basically taking a variable, multiplying it in, coming out with an answer. It's just a simple way to actually make everything simple for you. So with that information there, I just want you guys to understand where you can recognize it in the real world. But when we get to algebra, there's a lot of rules and regulations that you have to use when you're using the distributive property. So I'm going to go over those first before we actually start doing the real work. Okay? First, let me get this here and make sure I got this right. All right, first thing you have to remember when you're using distributive property is always the sign before the number is always got to be in the multiplication. Okay? I've known many a times where people gone in, I've done it myself, gone into a test and say, I know the distributive property, I know everything about it, and then mess up the sign and mess up the whole question, mess up the whole test. So that's a very important part. So I'll show you an example of it. Say we have 6 squared, 3x plus 4. Actually, make this a minus 4. So a lot of times people go in and they just distribute through, so we get 18x. Then we distribute it through again, and now most of the time people just would forget this minus right here. And then basically they would come up, oh, well, it was 24. That changes the whole answer. Am I correct?
Yes.
So, what you need to do is obviously this number, the sign before the number always counts with the multiplication. So, with that, that's going to be negative 24. That's one of the major points that I have, major points of it. It's the info that you got to keep in mind. The next one is when you're multiplying positive and negative integers, there's certain conditions that have to be met. So, when you're multiplying 2 negative numbers, it automatically turns into a positive number. That's one reason why. Next, if you have 2 positive numbers, it's obviously going to be a positive. Okay? When you have 2 negatives, negative and positive, that turns into a negative number. Same thing the other way. So if you have a positive here and you have a negative here, you're going to come with a negative number. So those are the two things that are very important in regards to when you're using a multiplication distributive property. The last one is also important that I've seen a lot of mistakes with a lot of kids have, is when you have variables such as x. Okay, when you're multiplying x times x, Okay? A lot of kids want to put the 1 right here, and they want to multiply the exponents together, which is you can't do. Okay? I don't know why everybody does it, because they feel like, oh, well, this is multiplication, and I'm multiplying x by x, so I shouldn't be multiplying 1 by 1, so a through 1. No, you should be adding them together. So what you do is you add these exponents together, so you come up with x2. Why do you do that? Anybody answer? Why is that? Why do we do that? It's a question. Go ahead, math man. I see your brain moving now. I see your brain moving now.
Why do we do?
Why do we always add exponents?
When you multiply, because I would do it by thinking of of real numbers. If you did 3 to the second power times 3 to the second power, it wouldn't end. Or 3 to the third. I think those two would work actually.
Right.
But
Exactly
if
right.
you plugged in real numbers for the variables,
Right.
you screw it.
Right. So that's my point. So if I said changed, I put the 5 for the x, and I put a 2 exponent 2. Okay, and I put same thing for this one. Okay. Now if I did it out, if I decided to put parentheses around it and do it out, I come with 25 times 25, which is 625. Okay. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. Now, if I added them together, I come 5 over 4, which ends up being the same thing, 625. If you want to, you could do it out on paper if you don't think that's true.
We believe you.
Okay. So those are the 3 things that are very important when you're doing multiplying distributing factors. Okay. So now let's get into the actual real stuff here. Okay. Knowing what we know here. I'm sorry, I might have to take out my objectives. So that's fine. Okay. To recognize when you need to do it. What you're trying to do when you have a multiplication distribution, you're trying to get away the parentheses. So say you have a problem like this. 4 minus 7. Okay. You can't combine like terms within the problem. Am I correct? You can combine one of those 2 like terms if you'd like to, but you really can't do them all in this problem. So what you have to do when you're doing the distributing factors is basically you have to multiply through with the 6x. So you multiply through 6x plus 3x equals 18x. Okay? Multiply through right here. Remember with the sign. Remember what we talked about over here? The signs have to be the signs to the left is very important. So that has to follow down with your multiplication. So, and remember, this is a positive times a negative, so that makes it a negative 24. Okay? And a positive times a negative 7 is a negative 42. Okay? So, breaking this down to breaking it down to a simplification, not reducing, you'd end up with 18x. Let's see, I would say, I'll go for 66. 66, because it's, remember, the minus to the left and the minus to the left. So these two things are together. So we know that this is a negative and this is also a negative. So we're going to add those together to make it 66. Does everybody see that difference there? Remember I talked about that over there? Okay, so that is a simple way to do the multiplication distributing factors. That's it.